Yeah, so speaking of these earlier stages of life, you see, there's just the obvious development of a human being. The faculties of a human being tend to develop progressively, encompassing more and more complexity, moving from a rather primitive stage, what we might call primitive stage in infancy, through developments physical and then emotional and etheric and so forth, onto the third stage of life. Everyone notices that people in their teens begin to solidify this whole matter of functional mind, intentional mind, life mind. A mature grasp, a relatively mature grasp of the outer world through intellect, the social world and so forth takes place at that stage. People make decisions about what they're going to do with their lives. They make choices, they direct themselves. Their next step from the third stage of life is an intentional one, you see, whereas children just go. They go where they're taken, or they just move spontaneously, you see. So it's in the third stage of life that we get this very ordinary developmental sign of intellect and intention and so forth that gives a kind of integrity to all of the development that has taken place in childhood. And then you're called an adult, you see. And from that point, from the maturity, the common maturity in the third stage, late teens, people move out to function in the world. You really don't have to develop beyond that to function in the common human world, you see. The fourth stage of life and beyond doesn't really have much significance in the common world. It's not desirable, it has no use. And this is why it's so subject to taboos, why any of the stages of life higher than the third are so subject to taboos. Because they don't have any use in this common world which depends on everybody's participation to guarantees, in some kind of way guarantees survival, you see. Everybody has got to get down there and be politically, socially active, productive, intentionally a part of this movement of humanity to fulfill various goals that are associated with survival. Well, the fourth stage of life and so forth beyond, you see, do not add to that survival ability. In fact, it's commonly felt that they distract you from that survival intention. So they don't want people to get too rapturous, you see. Governments don't want people to get too rapturous, too ecstatic. You see, if you're going to be religious, they want to check them and find out what kind of religion you belong to, and they want to make sure that all you're getting out of that religion basically are moral imperatives that improve your life as a socially productive personality, you see. They don't want you going to a church, typically all over the world. It's frowned upon for you to go to a church or involve yourself in religious practices that are about getting ecstatic or mystical. And mystical is a word that people seem to be ashamed to even use. You're not supposed to be mystical. So that kind of religion is not considered okay. But religion that gives you a reason to be moral or socially productive, you see, a good neighbor and a good functionary, that kind of religion is okay. Well, that's third stage religion, you see. It's the religion that is produced by teenagers, so the social personality, where you all get together and get things done together kind of stuff. In that kind of religion, the will is active, the mind is active. You make decisions that are about caring for this basically developed unit of the physical, emotional, and mental personality, you see. And through this socially directed will then, or mental intention, people become socially acceptable, socially productive, and earn their own survival through social participation. If you want any more religion than that, then you have to break out of the norm and endure some abuse, perhaps, for making choices that are not socially productive from the common point of view. And when you move into those stages, then you move beyond the circuitry of ordinary mind or lower mind, where things like will, free will, or not so free will are important or dominant factors in consciousness. You still associate with mind in the higher stages, but it's a different kind of domain of mind. Will, you see, is it's intention, obviously, mental intention. But what is commonly called the will is an intention directed toward the bodily personality, toward bodily purposes, social purposes, survival purposes, you see. What kind of will is involved in rapture? It is still in the domain of mind. Can it be called will any longer? Is it anything like free will? Or is it, you see, it's not so much that, because it's directed at the only one that is, and is not spinning in its independent fashion. So a different kind of mind begins to be explored even in the fourth stage of life. And then, of course, beyond the fourth stage of life, you move out of the circuitry of the descended or frontal or human personality into the ascending domain, into the subtle characteristics of possible experience that are even beyond the human. And that's a totally other orientation then of mind, requiring a different kind of participation in mind also. That's not so much about what is commonly called the will anymore. It's about submission rather than independence, surrender, transcendence, ecstasy. Requires a different kind of intelligence then. And you can't just be linked up to the will that looks to survive. You can, in your ordinary daily life, of course, look after your daily business, survival business. There's nothing about spiritual life that calls you to not take care of your ordinary requirements. But on the other hand, the fundamental orientation must transcend that ordinary will and purpose. Goes beyond the survival motive then. At least the survival of what is independent.